Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back. And we have a very special guest today. No, it's not my lovely wife, Julie Harris, who is sitting with us at this big marble table in Miami, Florida for an incredible C5 global event for EXP Realty. But we happen to, I think, mug Michael Valdes.
You can't mug a willing victim.
Who was kind enough to agree to be our very special guest and our impromptu guest. And so we just started having this a really fun conversation. And I thought to myself, why am I not recording this? That's what I did. It was like crazy. This is awesome. And so, yeah, Michael Valdes, welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and hang out and finally meet you guys in person.
Yeah, likewise.
This is really great.
It is. Isn't it weird? I mean, it's great virtual and everything, but actually seeing somebody?
Yeah. It's sort of like, it's fantastic. I mean, the relationship changes then, right?
It does.
It deepens.
It
so
sure
I
does.
love that.
Importance of events for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't like it when people ask me about myself or Julie, and so I'm going to ask you talk about yourself just to make you uncomfortable.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let's do it.
So you are.
I'm going to play Glenn. I'm going to take a moment and pause with every. No, go ahead.
So you are somebody who's been in the real estate industry for a long time.
Yes.
And you've played many different roles. You were the CEO of Sotheby's International, correct?
No, I was the global vice president for Sotheby's, but I was the senior vice president for Realogy,
right?
And covering all of the Realogy brands, which was Sotheby's, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, ERA, Better Homes and Garden, and Corcoran.
And how many years were you in those?
So I was at Realogy for 15 years total.
15 years, wow.
Yeah.
That's there's a lot of people that sort of take that corporate pathway. You kind of see on their LinkedIn profiles that kind of go from one brand to another. So when I'm just really curious, you went from sort of taking this predictable future in corporate real estate world to working for EXP Realty. I mean, what were you thinking?
What was I thinking? So, I got to tell you something. I had met Jason Gessing at a conference in New York. And we were doing a global real estate conference, and I was on the panel with Jason, and there were 4 other CEOs, and we were all talking about global real estate. And at one point, Jason sort of turns around, and we didn't know each other, and he said to the host, I don't really feel qualified to be answering these questions. We're only in 2 countries. Maybe you should just direct your questions to Michael. And I was just like, well, that was really benevolent. And so then the conversation shifted, and they were talking about disruptors, and everybody was talking about Compass, right? And so I actually said, I think from the people sitting on this stage, the only true disruptor is EXP. And I actually thought that because, you had the technology, you had really sort of like the different aspects of what it was. And so, and I wanted to return the favor. And so I said, the only true disruptor really on the stage, I think, is EXP. And so then afterwards, Jason approached me and he said, would you ever be open to having a conversation about an EXP Global? And I said, listen, I'll have coffee with anyone. And that really is how it started. And then literally we started talking, and I started, learning about EXP. I didn't really know much about it, the intricacies of it. But the more I learned, the more I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And then literally 2 months later, it was Inman. And Glenn and Jeff Whiteside, our CFO, come down. The 3 of us were supposed to have a 20-minute meeting, which then lasted 2.5 hours. At one point, Jason says, I'm going to miss my train to Boston. And Glenn sort of said, we're not done. You can leave. And so we just stayed, and we started creating what this could be.
Well, and I remember when you came in, the excitement from having you take over global, which really didn't exist prior to you. I mean, it did in a minor sense. And what you've been able to do, we were just talking about this over in the sitting area over there, was extraordinary. you've been at EXP for how long?
It's been joined in May of 2020.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Barely, year and a half basically.
Yeah, that's it, year and a half.
And you've brought in how many different countries?
So we did 14 countries thus far in whatever it's been, 14 months span, 15 months, yeah.
And you're intentionally slowing it down fourth quarter so you can basically refortify essentially.
Yeah, so we're taking a little bit of we're taking the foot off the gas pedal just a little bit so that we can actually build what we've already created. So we really are introducing teams and brokerages into a lot of these international countries and really building from there so that we can actually start having that agent count growth. So we've grown. When I first started, our agent count numbers outside of the United States probably represented just shy of 3% of our agent count, and now it's 11%.
Well, so putting those numbers in perspective, 3 to 11 doesn't sound that impressive, but in sheer numbers, it's an enormous amount. You're talking about 7,000 or 8,000 agents, correct?
Yes, it's about it's just shy of 7,000 agents outside of the U.S. at the moment.
Yeah, and countries like India and some of these other countries, they're growing so incredibly quick.
Oh my gosh, and India is a great story. We've been open in India for 9 months, and we are just at 1,000 agents right now.
That's insane.
Isn't that crazy?
Well, we say it because Julie and I, we've all been, combined experience here is probably close to 100 years, which is a little embarrassing to say, right?
Crazy. Don't ever say that again.
I know. I won't. Well, I won't even do combined ages. That's really depressing.
Yeah. Please stop.
Julie's 35 forever, so.
Yes, exactly.
But, it's incredible to be part of this because Julie and I and you, of course, have seen these big brands have their day in the sun and how they've really grown, but nothing has ever grown like this. But
so true.
It's not just the organic growth. You might have had a great franchise model and you had people that are excellent selling their franchises, great region holders. Julie and I were with Howard Brenton when the Keller Williams thing was really coming on strong.
Yeah.
And that was very impressive. And the growth out of Keller Williams is incredible. And the company they built was extraordinary. It is extraordinary. But when you look at, for example, the growth curve of Keller Williams versus EXP, and it's amazing. It just is amazing. We were just actually talking with Orlando about this. Can you think of anything else in real estate, maybe pure tech platforms aside, that have grown like this?
I actually can't. And that's what's so exciting about this. And you know what's so exciting is the fact that we're just getting started.
I know.
Isn't that insane?
It is insane.
I mean, we're only in 18 countries. My former company, I was overseeing 113 countries, excuse me. So we're just starting.
Here, this will blow your mind. This podcast is listened to in over 60 different countries.
That's insane.
It is
I love
insane.
it.
But why?
I love it.
I mean, that tells you that there's a lot of people around the world that sell real estate
Absolutely.
that are interested in, ideally, hopefully what Julie and I have to say on this podcast, but they're really interested in being successful in real estate.
You know what's amazing? Even where we are now at the C5 conference, we have so many countries represented for the countries we're already open, yet we actually have people in the audience from countries we're not even in yet.
I was going to ask you that. How many, if you were to open up the gates again, realistically, how many countries are teed up to come in next?
So we'll probably do another 10 to 12 probably next year. I think that's a fair number.
What would make so someone's listening now, and so I'm just thinking about some of the countries. We have people listening to us, and some of the country names, I had to look them up on a map. Right? But so if someone's in one of these countries and they want to consider having being the first, essentially opening a country with you, tell me what you look for.
So we actually do have a consumer-facing website. It's expglobal.partners with an S, and that site has a form where anyone can come in and nominate a country for consideration. And we're looking at the idea, look, we're building a global brand, right? And so we have very hard costs that we need to do because we're not a franchise. So we go in and we build a corporation. We get our legal stuff together, all of our banking, all of our finance, all of our accounting, the back office infrastructure. Then you have to sort of go in and get the team in place, the local team in place. So that takes a lot of resources. And so what we're looking at is to see what the opportunity in each of those countries are as we're building this global brand, because now we're building a network, right? And so we want to make sure that those countries where we're in already, wherever we go next, will benefit them as well.
So you have to have, you've had success stories, obviously. India, you mentioned 900 people in that
Yes.
short period. So there must be certain qualities that you look for in the people that you want to have EXP
yes.
partner with. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I think you need somebody who is an entrepreneur, somebody who really understands what this model does. Because it's not just about the high commissions, the revenue share, and the stock. It's about what's behind that, right? We really are a movement of what this is happening. When you're sitting there and you're talking to people that have said that revenue share allowed them to have a life-saving operation, how do you put that on a P&L statement? It becomes something that is so emotional. It becomes something where it's this that was built and was created is now so much greater than any one of us. It's larger than us. And so what you're looking at is what I call this movement that's happening. Because it's a movement about helping people. And that's the sort of the core of what this is. And that's why I think it's been as successful as it's been.
What was that thing the person in India said to you?
Oh my God, it was so amazing. So there was a large team from one of our competitors that came over in India. It was 300 people. And they, it's 2 million agents in India, so a 300-member team sounds huge here. But it's commonplace there. We're talking to somebody who has a 900-member team right now. But he said he was going to come over. And he says, before I come over, I really want to talk to you, Michael. And I said, of course. And so he said to me, do you know why I'm ready to move over? And I said, please tell me. And he says, because EXP has a model that was built for humanity. That was such an impactful statement from me. The fact that, somebody who wasn't with us understood and encompassed our message, our core message, in such a beautiful way and was able to say it so eloquently. I've used it in every one of my speeches thus far because it impacted me. And it was a beautiful message and a beautiful way to say what we're doing.
So we talked about this a second ago, right?
Yeah.
And we were sharing our stories and how we came to EXP, which is pretty funny how similar they were. But the thing that you said, that we said, that's impossible for us to explain with words or even videos, frankly,
right,
is what you just said.
Yes.
It's a movement for sure.
Yeah.
But we can say a little, clever things like the old rule was, it's what you're paying your broker. Now the new one is what is your broker paying you? But that doesn't even come close to scratching it. And it's not just you said it. It's not just the numbers. It's not just the revenue share, but it's the revenue share. It's not just the stock awards, but it's the stock awards. There's something that's happened that we've never experienced before. I'm looking over at Julie. She's nodding her head. That we've never experienced before outside of, maybe church or something. Really,
it hasn't much to do
and I don't understand
Absolutely.
it. Do you understand it? Why is it like this? Why this is something that feels almost like people listening right now?
Evangelical, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
But it sounds like we all joined a cult.
But you know what? It was so funny because with my old company, I was there for 15 years. And, and I said, I never heard anyone ever say to me that Realogy changed their life in the 15 years that I was there. Now, it may have happened. No one ever said it to me. And the moment that I joined EXP, I heard it from the very first week that I was here. And then at first I was actually taken aback. And so, the very first week I was there was for our shareholder summit that had 17,000 people in attendance. And that was my first week that I was at EXP. And so it was just sort of like trial by fire. I jumped right in. Everybody knew who I was at that point. And then it was one of those things that when I kept hearing that, it made me uncomfortable. I'm born and raised in New York. We're taught not to trust anything. And so it's sort of like, what is going on here? And so you start sort of thinking of, what is wrong with these people? Right? It's sort of like this, like, what's wrong here? And what did I just do?
Stay away from the Kool-Aid bowl.
And then I was just like, all right, well, I've already burned that bridge, so I'm all in. So let's just sort of like figure out what's going on here. And then I realized, oh my God, it really does change people's lives. And it changed mine. And so at that point, it's so impactful. And at that point, the conversation does change.
So this is the experience Jules and I had when we essentially when they finally got us to go to an event after we'd been stalked to get into EXP for like 6 years. Same with you, it sounds like. Yeah. That we were at this event and there was like 200 people in there. And Julie and I didn't sit next to each other. We kind of split the room because we don't get a
That was smart.
Well, we get recognized together, but we don't get recognized when we're not together. So
That
it's
is so funny.
So she went to this side, I went to this side, and then we just started asking people and trying to get to, breathe their air, find out what was
Sure.
going on. Find out if there was some sort of secret cult ritual that was, happens over lunch. So we ended up, and on the way back up, we were driving up, from San Antonio back to Georgetown, and we were talking to her. We were talking back and forth, like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. What was that experience? We've been to 1 billion real estate events. We've hosted 1 billion real estate events, and it's never like that.
Yeah.
And then she actually came to the conclusion it's because they see a path forward that gives them a sense of freedom that they never even intellectualized they could have, right? We were around. You were not around people that are, this guy's making $800 a month, pays his freaking car payment or his truck payment in Texas, right? This guy's making $3,500 a month. This guy's making $35,000 a month from revenue share. When you have people that are making money passively, it just removing some of the burden of the financial stress of, being able to move away from having all your income be transactional. That's what that's part of it.
You know what's interesting? It's not just about the freedom. It's about the legacy. And that's so much more important. When you're sort of talking about, when you're having such larger conversations where you're talking to somebody about not only their wealth, but their generational wealth and what they're leaving as a legacy behind, that's almost such a large conversation that people really can't sort of like wrap their heads around it. But that's the conversation. It's not just about your own financial freedom. It's about your legacy that you're leaving behind and the generational freedom that you're building.
That is definitely true depending on their age, right?
Yeah.
Older they get, maybe 40 and older, that's definitely, and if they, there's different, but definitely, I completely agree.
Yeah.
And that is something about revenue share that people don't understand. It creates, it is a, depending on your structure, you can pass revenue share.
Correct.
It's an inheritable asset.
That's right.
And that's, again, something people really don't understand. It's so incredible. Just the concept of it. I mean, you in your background, you must have, when you finally figured it all out, didn't you have that moment where you thought to yourself, damn it, why didn't I think of this?
Well, yes, but it was like, because I came from a banking background, and we were talking about this earlier. And when I actually started talking seriously to EXP about coming over, I pulled every SEC filing that they had, and I read it. And I was just sort of like, there's something wrong with this model. It's just too good to be true. So there has to be something wrong with this, and I'm going to figure it out. And I was sort of like looking at this, and I was just like, I can't poke the hole in this. I can't figure out where this is. And then it was just like, damn it, why didn't I think of it?
I know, it's so true.
It's so awesome. Because
Julie,
I'm not Glenn Sanford, that's why.
well, I think what he did when he did it, though. I mean, he was so far. You'll appreciate this. This is total nerd stuff, Freddie. You can handle it, I'm sure.
I'm older than you. I can handle this.
By 4 years. So
Respect your elders.
I am. So we are listening to something about Thomas Edison. We talked about this in our podcast the other day, and people are talking. If you want to look at historically what influenced someone who's a true innovator, that wasn't even the term they were using. When you want to look at essentially somebody who really was like a Michelangelo type,
Yes.
or for example, look at Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
So the smartphone would have been developed, but he basically developed it 5 years before everyone else did.
Sure.
So when you're trying to quantify who essentially, or where our greatest innovators were in the history of humanity, it's how many years they allowed us to skip ahead. Does that make sense? Isn't that interesting?
So true.
You could, we can talk forever about, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now.
Absolutely.
Seriously, think about all the things he's
Absolutely.
done.
Yes.
It's extraordinary.
And the way that he thinks. Absolutely.
And in his day now, he gets a lot of people that don't understand him because he's so
Yeah.
abnormal. But what he's doing is he's a modern day Michelangelo.
100% agree with you.
And I'm sure this would embarrass Glenn if he heard us say it, which he will because he's listening,
Yes.
I'm sure. But he is the Michelangelo. He is the innovator. He's the one that's moved the industry ahead. Well, Julie and I were thinking about this after listening to that podcast. How many years?
Absolutely.
By more than 5.
Oh my God. Well, think about it. It's so the platforms that are around for 12 years, right? And we're all a virtual company where everyone's an avatar. And this is a virtual company that started in 2009. So nobody had heard about coronavirus back then, right? No one's talking about a pandemic. No one's talking about a response to something that was a global pandemic. And how do we actually relate with one another in community remotely when you cannot leave your home. We've been doing this already for a decade before coronavirus even came in. So he's at least jumped it by a decade. And that's what's so extraordinary. We were just talking about that downstairs in another language. But it was something that is so interesting when you start thinking about it. When you start thinking about Glenn's mind, I mean, it's sort of like he's way ahead in that chess game.
He is, because back in 2009, we were all basically Zillow this, Zillow that, buying leads, building teams, franchise this, independent this, big brokered this. And he had the idea, why don't we just create a big international brokerage and license all 50 states, and obviously going to different countries, and then do it virtually. And what costs can we eliminate from the whole, and like the process, we're, your old world, right?
That's right.
All those franchises and franchisors and all the rest of it. I mean, to have all that stuff, it wasn't necessary. And to pass that money back to the agents. That conceptually is almost, it doesn't seem like it's a thought. Like I said, it's 5 years, 10 years into the future. And here's an interesting question. Julie and I actually talked to Glenn about this, is what is the probability? How could somebody actually catch up with the XP?
That's so true. Yeah. I keep saying that. It's sort of like, look, we have this internal goal of, getting to that 100,000 agents, whether we do that in this calendar year or not. But wait.
We will.
But even like, we're at 66,000 agents as of this conversation, and we have an incredible trajectory here. We're in our last quarter. We've got about 80 days left, and we are running really, really strongly. But even if we fall short and we're like at 80 or 85,000 agents, guess what? We're still the largest independent real estate company in the world. And that is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. Do you realize I was on the Alpha call this morning, and there was a stat that we did 40% of our historic agent growth this calendar year.
That is incredible. Yeah, that's true.
Isn't that extraordinary?
Yeah. Well, 999 agents came in last week or the week before that?
Correct. Last week.
Yeah. Why not 1,000?
I know.
I mean, we need to stop being so lazy. Come
exactly.
one person.
Couldn't you have called one other person?
Oh my gosh. Well, we were here helping Orlando, otherwise we would have. Wow, we slacked.
I know you did.
But that's the thing. So we hear sometimes, and I'm sure you hear it too. People are worried, well, there's going to be some sort of competitor that's going to come in, but we're so far ahead. It's like the Elon Musk electric cars thing. So Julie and I were, as we told you, driving around the country for 60 days, and we would go to Nowhere, USA. We're from Nowhere, USA, so I'm not making fun of Nowhere, USA when I say it like that.
Yeah.
And there would be a charge station there.
Yeah.
In this dusty town that
Iowa,
Yeah.
There's corn everywhere, a gas station, and there's 8 charging stations. And it looks great. It's incredible.
Yeah, but he put those in before he started selling a lot of cars.
Yeah.
But that's what Glenn did.
Yes.
That's the thing that's an innovator truly does. That's really exceptional to be a part of.
It's so true.
And then so for someone to come in and try to be a competitor, for those of you who are thinking that EXP is going to all of a sudden have a lot of people chomping at us, the amount of growth, it's just like the big manufacturers now trying to catch up with Tesla. They might be able to make a really great electric car, but they don't have the grid.
That's right.
And
what's interesting is the idea of our agility as well, right? We're a very agile company. We have very little sort of bureaucracy for us to start making decisions and things like that. When we go into every country, do you realize that we have a different model in every country? So it's the idea that we are a local player. We come in and we understand what the entire market does. We study the market. We come in and we have our core of what is true to EXP with a very high commission rate, the stock options and the revenue share. But the numbers are different, so percentages might be different. And what we do is that we see what everybody else does, because real estate is a local business. And I think that's been what some of the pitfalls for a lot of our competitors.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. A lot of our competitors have one model across the world, right? It's sort of like we're not one homogenized population globally. Real estate is local. And so we come in and we study the market and we build a local model. And we are a local company with a global footprint. And it's very hard to compete with us.
Let me unpack that a little bit. 'Cause
Sure.
What you said was really interesting. So one of the appealing factors that a lot of brokers and teams find out about EXP is EXP is not a franchise. They want you to keep your existing branding. They want you to keep your existing everything.
Yes.
So it could be Tim and Julie Harris Real Estate, brokered by EXP.
100%.
Your colors don't change. The logo doesn't change. They're not coming in there and telling you how to run your business. You obviously know what you're doing. Keep doing it, but it's brokered by EXP. So you're saying when EXP goes to India or Spain or Italy or
Yep.
Germany or wherever else we go, we're also partnering with existing established people, and we're not telling them to change their names. It's,
Absolutely.
it's,
We're not
Carlos.
telling them what to do.
Exactly. And so then as we have the same appeal of the local well-known brands.
100%.
And then it's just brokered by EXP.
That's right.
That I hadn't even considered that from an international perspective.
Yep.
That's actually really genius.
Absolutely. And we go in and we're very competitive in the model that we present because we study what everyone else does. And because of our size, it allows us to come in at a competitive advantage.
It really does bring up some other, this is something, again, you find when you're recruiting agents, is a lot of them will think that they have to, that the brand matters, right? And they don't understand that they are the brand.
100%.
When you do, so
my
that
God.
that's funny to hear from you because you came from a company
I
where
know.
it was all brand.
And let me tell you, that actually took a while for me. When I understood, because when I was 15 years at the other brands, the brand led, right? And your consumer was the end customer. Here, your client is the agent. The agent is really, this is an agent-centric company. And this is all about building the agent into the brand. The agent becomes the brand. And that's what this is. And I was like, once I got that, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. The agent's the brand? And it was just like, wow, that's like unstoppable. And it has been. And it's been extraordinary. Once that clicked in my head, because that was a really big sort of like click that had to go off. But once I understood that, it was like, wow, this is really, truly the only disruptor in the industry. It's extraordinary what's happened.
Well, exactly. And, when you, agents listening, let me just sort of decipher what we're talking about. If you're a new agent, you don't quite understand how true it is what we just said, what Michael just said. But if you're an experienced agent, here's all you have to do. Well, I mean, remember when Julie and I were selling a lot of houses with RE/MAX, and we went and we would do a survey after we had a closing, just because we wanted them to rate our team, and the team would get a little bonus based on how, if they got 5-star ratings. And then we added the question, what real estate brokerage are Julie and I with? And they thought we were with our own. They didn't even realize we were RE/MAX agents.
I love that.
But it's
that's
true.
Brilliant. That's brilliant to do that. Because that's actually a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
They just think, oh, I need the brand behind me. That's why this client went. And it's sort of like real estate is a relationship business, period. You only do business with people that you like and trust, period. Doesn't matter where you are. It's sort of like, and then why not be someplace that can build you on a global scale?
So, macro issue. Can I ask you a macro issue?
Sure, you
question?
can.
This is about the economy, not necessarily about real estate.
Yeah.
So inflation, right? Doesn't appear to be transitory. Does seem that we're in a long-term cycle of inflation.
Yep.
We've seen that housing has appreciated. Well, let's call it what it is. Housing has inflated.
Right.
Agents call it appreciation, but kind of the same. Feels
Right.
the same.
Yes.
Feels the same until consumer items start to be
Correct.
priced. Dealing with the new reality of inflation.
Sure.
So we're entering into this phase of the economy. You and I aren't that, different in ages, but back when Jimmy Carter was president, that's the last time we dealt with any sort of inflation.
Right.
We're going to a different cycle. From your perspective, what are you thinking?
Look, I think that at this point, you have to sort of remember when back in 2009, I was actually selling real estate, and it was actually my best year. And where a lot of other people had obviously the worst year they've ever had, it's the idea that we serve our clients, and whatever the market is doing, our industry, we're still there to serve. So I was actually selling in Miami at the time, and so because of my banking background, I knew a lot of financial companies that were coming in, and they were creating Vulture Funds. You remember Vulture Funds?
Of course.
And so they were coming in and buying.
Let's tell them what a Vulture Fund is.
So Vulture Funds were when everything was really like going down the drain with values. You had a lot of developers that couldn't finish their buildings because their construction loan stopped. Right? You had a lot of people that were upside down. You had those that even the short sales, they couldn't even do the short sales. So there was a lot of foreclosures. banks and financial institutions did not want to be landlords, and they became landlords. They had a lot of real estate. And so Vulture Funds came in, which were started with hedge funds, and the Vulture Funds were actually buying all of these properties at pennies on the dollar, really. And so I was representing some of these Vulture Funds that were coming in. So I was in South Florida at the time, in the Miami area, selling real estate, and it was that type of business that was happening. So you have to adapt also as a real estate professional in here. So whether we're in an inflationary situation, or whether this sort of rides out for another period of a couple of years, which I don't think it will, there is that sense of we're only there to serve. We're only there to serve what it is that we're doing. So that sort of like, from an agent point of view, when you're sort of thinking about that, it doesn't really matter what's happening outside of the forces you can't control. I would always say to just focus on that you can.
So at the end of the day, agents are needed whether the house prices are going up or down.
100%.
Right. It's the skill set of the agents that
There it
changes.
is.
So you had to learn and adapt to basically deal with the distressed real estate.
That's right.
And whereas before, I'm sure down here especially, you were selling a lot of very expensive luxury real
That's
estate.
right.
And it changed within 24 months in a very meaningful way. So agents, and here's to Michael's point, and Julie and I saw this, coaching, the people that are generally speaking the top agents in a market that is a strong seller's market have the hardest time transitioning to a market that's changing, or especially a market that starts to essentially become a distressed market. So it's be careful of your level of adaptability. And one of the best litmus tests as to whether or not you're going to be able to succeed in any market in any direction is ask yourself how dug in you are about your beliefs that things won't change. You said about 24 months. Was there any particular reasons behind that?
No, not really.
Yeah.
But
it's fascinating though.
But here's what it is interesting. I think that there is a disservice for someone who's entered the real estate industry in, say, the last 5 years or so, that all they've known is an up market, because you don't have the skill set to really be able to know the flip side of the market. And all you have to do is, markets are cyclical. There is no argument there. So they go up and down, and that's what every market does. And so the period of time between them is a different story. But when you start looking at this and you start looking at somebody who's only been in an up market, it's a disservice to them.
Michael, it's everybody.
I know.
But think about it.
I know.
But it really is, actually, when you start thinking about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, since 2009, what percent? How many
that's
agents
really
do you
true,
run
actually.
into? Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all none of them.
Look at the turnover.
Right.
We know
You're
from
right.
our they can't hear you.
Yeah,
we know from our coaching business that none of them were in the business back then.
Yeah, you're actually right.
Yeah.
Right. So you start thinking about that. And then you start sort of thinking about who that individual is as a person, right? Because I've heard infinite stories of brokers that are now in a multiple sort of like, a multiple ask situation if you're representing the seller. And they're not just not even responding to their colleagues. These tables, when they flip, that sort of like audacity that somebody has because of their displaced level of confidence in the market, they're going to be very humbled if they are not sort of understanding that now. The humility has to happen now when you're up.
Absolutely. But so my mind's bouncing around all over the place, probably because you and I are having Diet Pepsis. but here's the thing: how it's affecting the market now, and you've seen this too. Julie and I like to talk about driving from Las Vegas to Laguna Beach, driving through the desert and driving through Victorville, California.
Yeah.
And there was a builder that had a sign up. This sounds like a joke, but it wasn't. A billboard: buy one, get one for free.
Come on.
Yep. Production houses. He couldn't give them away. Literally, he was trying to give them away.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That's insane.
But you're seeing something like buyer agent commissions. I know you're international. I don't know how much but people don't know outside the United States and Canada, the only two countries where there's an entitlement to a buyer agent commission that the seller pays. I know this is a thing that's hotly debated right now on the legal stuff and all the rest of it. But what we're seeing, and coaching client wise, is these buyers agents are now having to essentially they're working for hundreds of dollars sometimes in some of these markets just to get the house for their buyer.
Sure.
And we have also heard and we've seen the big I buyers are trying to they're testing the market to see how little a co-op they can offer before it actually adversely affects the ability to sell the house.
Yep.
We've seen that happen in two different markets from our coaching clients.
Yep.
So it makes sense that what's going to happen is people are going to start realizing like the rest of the world, aside from the United States and Canada, the buyer agent commissions might be something that agents are no longer just going to have to assume it's going to always be part of the transaction.
That's very true.
They're going to have to start selling to the buyer why they're worth whatever the commission is.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's kind of a fascinating trend that no one's talking about, too.
It's very true.
And all it would take is a couple little legal, things happening here or there, and that's what would happen. But really, if you want to talk about, how one of these iBuyers are the ones that probably will try to squeeze that out of the transaction.
Absolutely.
So again, listeners, don't be scared. Where's where you go with this, right? I know some of this, we're talking about distressed and buyer agent commissions going away, but here's the fact. It all adjusts. Michael said it.
It all adjusts.
It's because back in the market where I was talking about 2 houses for one,
Exactly.
I bet you he was paying a 42% buyer agent co-op too.
It's so true.
But
Right?
that's how it swings. I mean, it's really insane.
100%.
How's it work in other countries, the countries with buyer agent commissions?
You know what? It's sort of like real estate is so different around the world. It is just extraordinary. Think about most countries don't even need a real estate license, right? So when you start thinking about that, and then you start sort of thinking, my God, how do you regulate this? How do you start sort of like thinking about this? Every country is so different. The United Kingdom, for example, the average commission in the United Kingdom is 1%, total commission.
But let's break that down because it's even more interesting than that. There's no MLS.
There's no MLS.
Yeah, so you go from broker to broker to broker.
That's right.
Yeah.
And everyone has their own. There's no MLS in New York City, in Manhattan,
right?
By the way. And so there's no MLS at all in London. And London is an incredible. I lived in London for 4 years, and there's actually a term in the real estate company, in its real estate industry in the UK called gazumped. Have you ever heard this word?
No.
So if you have a deal, you can have a signed deal with the seller in the United Kingdom. I can come back and tomorrow Julie can offer me another £500,000. She now has the deal. You just got gazumped. The deal is not a deal until it's a deal. It doesn't matter what's signed, it doesn't matter what's what. If there's a better deal, I'll take the better deal.
Wow.
Until the property closes. Try doing business there.
And probably even until you get the keys.
Well, until you get the keys, right? until sort of like the money's in the other bank.
Exactly.
There's actually a term, gazumped.
Yeah, this goes back to Julie and I have worked with the National Association of Realtors for a long time.
Yeah.
And people do, they complain about their NAR dues. If you guys had any clue what NAR does to, it's not just what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is obviously from a real estate perspective is self-serving. But I remember during the real estate crisis, Julie and I were on the phone with someone from National Association of Realtors, and he had walked into a meeting that he was late to with the FDIC. Am I getting all these facts right, Julie? And the banks were the lobbyists for the banks were in the midst of basically sealing a deal with the FDIC to make it so the banks would tell the agents what the commissions were going to be on the distressed real estate. And National Association of Realtors, thankfully, still has the strongest lobbyists in the world.
That's crazy.
And turn it around. Isn't that a whack?
That's insane.
We had him on our podcast. No, this was before it was a podcast. It was a webinar. It was like nobody, and then people complain about paying $600 a year.
Right.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It is. Well, as you're in this job, we've been going for 30 minutes. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, what would be the biggest, 3 things that you see coming for eXp Realty in the next 12 months that you can talk about?
Right.
He's giving me a big smile. that you can talk about that will blow everyone away. And if you don't want to be that specific, you can talk in generalities.
Sure. Look, as I said, we're just getting started. We're in 18 countries. We're looking at doing another 10 to 12 next year. We're created these regional hubs now. And so we have our EMEA hub, which is Europe, Middle East, India, and Africa. I'll put India in there for now. And so we're creating our APAC hub next, which is really filling in a lot of the Asia countries and really getting a foothold there. We already announced Japan coming soon. And we're looking at other strategic countries throughout Asia Pacific. And then, of course, Latin America. And, you and I and Julie are here at a conference that is all Spanish speaking right now, the C5 conference. And so that is something where that focus on Latin America is huge. And so we'll be continuing there. And I think there's going to be some great announcements that are coming, maybe even sooner than next year. We're going to make some major announcements at EXPCon next month.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty. And you mentioned all these countries, and you mentioned all this growth that's happening internationally. And I'm trying to, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking back to the Tim and Julie that were hesitant to join EXP for all those years, back prior to 2019. And, back then it wasn't anything like it is now. You weren't involved in the company. There wasn't all this international growth. There wasn't all this incredible, but there's really no reason at this point not to join EXP Realty. We say there's two categories. There's agents that are EXP curious and ones that are just basically haven't had the time to fill out the application yet. Because, really, at the end of the day, there's no real compelling reason not to do it. Whether you're a big broker, a small broker, or whether you're a team, when you look at the economics of the whole thing, from the individual agent's perspective, but even the largest of teams, it's extraordinary. It's night and day.
I was having dinner with a friend of mine. She's a real estate journalist for the New York Times. And so we were having a conversation, and we had dinner the other night. And she sort of said, I've never really asked you about EXP. And we went through, and her jaw was open. And she says, why doesn't everyone join EXP? And literally that was and I was like, why don't you write that?
Did she?
Not yet.
She will. Well, but other people
intrigued.
have. Other people
Yeah.
have. There's a great article in Motley Fool recently,
Oh,
and
God,
others.
yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But I don't know, guys. There you go. Julie, want to say anything as we wrap? Julie's been sitting here steadfast and.
You said it the best. It is astonishing. It really is, and I don't know why anybody would wait at this point.
No.
I really don't. There's no reason. There's nothing compelling to wait for.
Yeah, that's right.
Take action.
So there you go. That's our impromptu sitting at Orlando Montiel's dining room table at a suite somewhere high up in a building in Miami, Florida. We sprung an interview on Michael Valdes.
I love it. Are you kidding?
You are a gentleman. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm looking forward to doing many, 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 many international sponsoring events with you in the future.
And you know what? And it's sort of like everything that you and Julie have done for this company already is just amazing. And the lives that you've touched, thank you for what you've done. It's been extraordinary. And it is my honor just to meet you now and to really be in business with both of you.
Likewise, my friend. I sincerely appreciate that too. We do feel the same way because at the end of the day, we really are changing lives.
We really are.
It is amazing, isn't it? We're blessed.
We really are. It's amazing.
Have a great day,
you.
listeners. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.